Hello, I'm Tom, Golf Zero Sierra Bravo Whiskey, and in 2004 I was asked to assist with the making of a TV documentary by the Battlefield Detectives team. The documentary was about the Battle of Arnhem. In this talk I'm not going to discuss the actual battle at all, really, but what I am going to discuss is my involvement in the making of the TV documentary. These are the topics I'm going to cover in the next half hour or so. First I'll talk for a short while about how we got involved with the filming of the Battlefield Detectives programme. Then I'll speak about how we developed the backpacks to meet the requirements for the filming. Then talk a bit about the testing of the backpacks, and just to check how well they did and whether they would fit the bill. Then I'm going to talk about, just for a short while, about the actual experience of the filming. It was very different for us. We'd never done anything like that before, and it was really quite interesting and a bit of hard work actually. And then it will be time to talk about our initial findings, and then investigations into the issue since then. And finally, I'll talk about the conclusions that we came to. Well, a little bit now about my involvement in all of this. Now, poor battlefield communications are often cited as being a contributing factor to the British defeat at the Battle of Arnhem in September 1944. The Battlefield Detectives TV series examined reasons for success and failure in major world battles. They wanted to reenact the communications links at Arnhem using wartime radios. Because the working WS-68Ps, the wartime radios, could not be found, this part of their investigation was about to be shelved when Dr. Brian Austin, G0 GSF, who was their radio consultant, read my HF backpacking article in Radcom. He considered equipment similar to mine could be used to simulate the wartime sets. I quickly accepted an invitation to join the investigation team. 2 backpacks were needed to be assembled and field tested prior to the filming, which was due to take place in 18 days' time. Thankfully, Peter, Golf 8 BLS, a colleague and friend of mine, agreed to help with the backpack development and the field trials. Sadly, Peter is now a silent key, but he did do a lot of further investigative work after the filming was finished, for several months after the filming was finished. I'll refer to that later in this talk. So, requirements of the backpack were as follows. We were advised that these would be the requirements of any backpacks we were going to build if they were to simulate the performance of the WS-68P radios used at Arnhem. First of all, they had to produce a quarter watt of AM. Now we found, Peter and I both had Yaesu FT817s, and we thought that would do the job. They would be fine. In actual fact, they proved very difficult to accurately get down to a quarter of a watt. I did have I still have it, an ICOM 703, and we tried that, and that was perfect for the job. It was very easy to calibrate down to a quarter of a watt and maintain it at that figure very easily. We only had one ICOM 703. We spoke to ICOM UK, and they very kindly loaned us a second ICOM 703, and we used both of them, and they worked very well throughout the whole of the period. The simulated rigs, or the rig simulations you might call them, had to have a range of 3 miles. I had to use a short antenna. Now we had, fortuitously, we had some short antennas, ex-army antennas, and which were 11 feet, so that was fine. And we couldn't use a counterpoise. we had to use capacitive earthing via the operator's body. That's a new thing for us, but we did manage it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So that was the requirements for the backpacks. Well, this is a photo of the 703 being tested for its quarter watt power output. The rig, this is the coil, this is the meter, and the dummy load is just out of the photograph over here. I decided not to use the dummy load on the meter. Well, this is a close-up of the power meter during the test of the 703, and you can see that it's set to the 1 watt scale, and it's showing a quarter of a watt, just slightly under. That's 3 watts. That's 0.3 watts, 0.2 watts. So yeah. Well, now I want to talk about the build-up of the backpack. A starting point, I suppose, would be the actual the 703 itself. Here you can see the base unit, and here the head unit. I've put on a chest table, you might call it, and that round my neck, and the base unit is fastened to the backpack. So let's move on to the backpacks. These are the 2 frames we use for the backpacks. This one is the one that Peter used, and this is the one which I used. They're basically the same ex-British Army frames for radios, and Peter's a little bit heavier and more robust. Mine's not quite as heavy. So we'll really concentrate on this one now. Well, this is the backpack I use, and the first thing you'll notice is this capacitive earth plate. It's actually made by aluminium foil sandwiched by 2 children's plastic dinner plates, and hence the wording on it. It worked very effectively. It was very good, so fine. The next thing you'll notice is if I move the harness out of the way, there's a little pocket here that you can see, and another one on this side. The light isn't very good in here today, it's a really dull day. Now this side here, this little pocket here, is for the antenna to be held whilst we're actually walking, not while we're operating, but just to hold it somewhere nice and safe. And that just slides in like that. And the one on this side, which I'll move it into the light a little bit, is for the battery. Here's the battery. It's nickel metal hydride. I've had this one almost 20 years now. Still going okay. Another one that I had is actually damaged and broken, but this one and one like it, I've got 2 of them now, are working well fine. I guess I'm going to have to change them and maybe go for lithium ferrous batteries. What is LA? So there we go, in there. So that's the basics of the backpack. But what we haven't spoken about yet is the coil. I'd now like to show you the coil that we made. It seems a bit long way. I'll come a little bit closer. So I have to walk around the table to do that. But here we are, and I think maybe you can see that. These are the tappings for top band, 160 meters, and these are tappings for 80 meters. So it's a dual band coil, you might say. And it's made very simply of, I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just a piece of pipe with some foam through it, and then another layer of foam on top of the pipe, and then the close wound Teflon wire wrapped around it to get the required number of coils. They work very well, and we tap the points here to get the various where we wanted to. You can see maybe I marked, not terribly good is it, I marked on here with the tapping points for the various frequencies, and again for 80 meters. Of course we have to mount the radio and the antenna and the battery and fasten them all together, and we made a wooden, it's plywood backplate which to do that job actually, and it fits onto, you might be able to see them, onto these 4 little lugs here. It just fits onto those very nicely. If I can get it here and get it the right way around, and let's put it on from the back. So there we go. So that is actually on it now, and when you got the radio on and the radio strapped in and fastened on, it holds it all nice, and all the items for joining all the bits and pieces together are on here, and of course the body of the radio fits on there as well, so it makes a nice neat job there. Last but certainly not least are the rain covers that we made for the rigs and for the backpacks. These proved invaluable. During the actual filming it rained quite a lot of the time, and they worked brilliantly. We didn't get any problems with wet, damp or anything there. So yeah, so the rain covers are basically a set of bicycle pannier covers, for waterproof covers for panniers, and here they are. First is a small one, and this actually goes over the rig and the components actually on the backboard itself, and it covers it. You then have a large one here which goes over the whole rig. I'll show you how that fits. Goes over the antenna there and then down, and then the rest of it comes right over the whole of the rig. I won't battle with it now because I haven't got the other things to hold it on, but over that, so you've got a double layer of rain protection. Nothing on the back, of course. I was the rain protection for the what I call it, the back or the front of the backpack. Leave it on, a bit loose, and then finally we have a smaller one which just went over the chest table here. So that came over to one side, over the chest table is here, and this went over that. And the 3 of them together worked brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. We couldn't have asked for anything better. Well, you've seen the components of the backpack, and I put them together, and what I'll show you now is just a very short video of me walking around the back garden showing it being worn. Well, this is the backpack assembled. Just pointing out the various bits. First we have the battery in here, the base of the 703 here, the coil here, you can't see it really here, but the earthing sheet, contact earthing sheet there, the antenna goes in there. The head of the rig is here on the chest table, ready to go on my chest. I'll put the whole thing on shortly and show you. And the antenna is here in its holder for transport. I'll just take it out. Well, hello. I'm just about to walk around the garden. I put the backpack on, and it's very comfortable, nice and easy. No major problems. So I'm going to have a walk round, so you can see how, what it looks like whilst I'm walking around, I guess. Hope you can hear me. Very windy today, so quite a lot of wind noise around, but hopefully that will be fine. Okay, so here we go. think you can probably see the backpack in here. There's no trailing counterpoise. Nothing to snag at all, no trailing counterpoise there. So there we are. Just a little short walkabout just to show you the rig actually being used. Well, the last piece of kit to be discussed is not actually part of the backpack at all. Now, when we were doing the initial testing of the backpack and we were walking around, we found that the SWR varied tremendously. We would set it so it would be perfect. We walk around and it would go off straight away or almost straight away to a very high SWR. We came to the conclusion that this was due to poor earthing through our bodies, of course, via the capacitive sheet on the backpack. Thinking about it, we solved this by getting better earthing and through our feet, and the answer was to use these. Here we are. Boots, but boots which have an anti-static sole, so we managed to get a decent earth all the while we're walking, certainly over ground rather than pavement, using these anti-static boots. They made the day, because otherwise we could not have done it. We could not have. We would have been okay using drag wires, but that isn't part of the remit, was it? We wanted to get away from using drag wires when we were operating. Well, having built the backpacks and having got them to work reasonably well and close to each other, we decided to test them over slightly longer distances. This map here shows some of the tests that we did, and the first test were over a relatively short distance of maybe 3 or 4 kilometres here to the east of Ipswich. I'm the red dots and Peter is the yellow dots. No problems here at all. I then moved to the Naze here. Peter moved to the coast near Felixstowe, and again we didn't have any problems talking to each other there over that distance. It's probably about that would be about 6 or 7 kilometres. Whilst we were doing that test, a maritime mobile station anchored over here heard us, and he joined in. So that was actually quite a distance, but it is over salt water, so that might explain the the distance. That must be over 20 miles or so, no, 20 kilometres or so. And on another day I moved to this position here and worked Peter quite well, and that actually was classed as a world record for pedestrian mobile to pedestrian mobile at that power level, and we put that into the HF Pack Hall of Fame. Well, good morning. It is a good morning. Very cold though. It's just 1 degree above freezing. The purpose this morning is to try and get a QSO with Liz, Golf 0 Mike Delta Lima, who lives about it's 10 kilometres or so, 6 miles in that direction over there, on the other side of the island that you can see over there. I wanted to work her with a 1/4 watt of AM. I'll initially call her with maximum power on this ICOM 703, which is 4 watts of AM. This is Golf 0 Sierra Bravo Whiskey, inquiring if the frequency is in use.
Nothing heard here, Tom.
Good morning, Liz. I was just about to say nothing heard. Going to start at yeah. It's good to hear you anyway, and thanks very much for the QSO. And I'm standing on the Ray Creek, looking directly across down the Blackwater to the power station, straight down the Blackwater, of course. Can't see West Mersey at all. There it is. Oh, I'm running 4 watts at the moment. 4 watts, the maximum on AM for the 703. Back to you. G0MDL, G0SBW.
G0SBW, G0MDL. Okay, Tom. Yes, you're 5 and 9 with me at the moment. Unfortunately, the noise is S9 as well, so you are a bit down in the noise, but perfectly readable. And okay, fine there, Liz. G0SBW pedestrian mobile returning.
Yeah, well, a bit chilly. So that's. I'm just going to go down to a quarter of a watt. Then I'll come back and see if you can still hear me, Liz. Just stand by. G0MDL, G0SBW. Yes, I've gone down to a quarter watt now, Liz. I wonder if I'm still readable with you. Over to you.
G0SBW, G0MDL. Yes, I can still hear you, Tom. You can see on the waterfall here that the power's gone down a bit. Could you just go again and I'll give you a signal report. G0SBW, G0MDL.
Fine there, Liz. G0MDL from G0SBW. Yes, well, you're 5 and 9 plus 20 dB. 5 and 9 plus 20 dB. So you're clear.
G0SBW, G0MDL. Okay, Tom, you're as I say, I've got an S9 noise level here at the moment, unfortunately, and I was copying you, and there's a bit of QSB on the band, and you did drop down slightly, and I lost you a bit in the noise there. No, you can see you're there, and your pedestrian mobile rig is working.
Well, Peter and I spent 3 whole days on this particular project at Arnhem. We spent one day getting there and meeting the rest of the film crew. We spent one whole day, a big day actually, being filmed in various places. But that was condensed down in the final documentary to about 3 or 4 minutes. So, but we spent a whole day, in the rain mostly, being filmed. And then on the last day, the rest of the film crew went away to do something, another part of the documentary, and Peter and I did some more tests on our own at Arnhem, and then flew back home in the afternoon. Following on from this particular clip is some information regarding the routes we walked over and tested with the radios, and also some photos taken during the actual filming of us. So dealing now with the tests we did on the battlefield at Arnhem. This shows the basic area where the battle took place, and these strips show the routes over which we walked and took our radio measurements. This area here was the dropping zone, the landing zone for the gliders and the parachutists. The bridge which they were trying to capture is this one here, and the route they took, the soldiers took, was basically from the dropping zone here and across this way along the road there to the bridge, and actually they finished off in this sort of area here. Our first test at Arnhem was over the dropping zone area, and it was from A to B. The 703s had no problems whatsoever talking across there, and also we also spoke from A to B with the 703 to the WS68P, also with no problems. So that actually mirrored exactly what's happened during the battle, because there were no communication problems in the drop zone area. For the next test, 1703 and the WS68P went to position C, and the other 703 went to position D, which is the Hartenstein Hotel, and during the battle was the headquarters of the 1st Airborne Division. The two 703s had no difficulty communicating over this relatively short distance, and it was also possible to hear the WS68P, though this seemed to be having some problems. During the battle, the WS68Ps also had difficulty communicating over this route, this part of the route. Peter with his 703 and Gary Tunyan with the WS68P then moved from position C to position E, which is close to the bridge, of course. Tom remained at position D at the Hartenstein Hotel, which, as I said before, was the headquarters of the 1st Airborne Division during the battle. At the bridge in the centre of the busy town, Peter suffered from a high level of background noise and could not hear my AM transmissions. On the other hand, I, in a quieter radio environment, could just hear Peter and, for a short period, Gerrit and Jan with everything. The day after the filming, Peter and I had a little bit of time to spare in the morning before we flew home. So we decided to do some extra tests on our own, just using the 703s. And what we did is that I stopped here and Peter went to this point and then on to this point. And the fall off in propagation was not too bad in this open area here, but it was quite serious in this area here. So it changed our ideas about, our ideas developed the day before. The second day test results changed our earlier view that there did not seem to be any major problem in using low power AM on 160 metres for communications at Arnhem. We clearly experienced the same problems as the airborne troops in 1944 as they moved from open ground to wooded areas, even though we used excellent modern transceivers. Well, this is a photograph taken during the on location at Arnhem when we were doing the filming. This is Sarah Kane, the assistant producer for this particular film, and this is the wireless set 68p. This is a military enthusiast, Jan van der Riet, who is working with the radio amateur here, which is Gerrit, Papa Alpha Zero Golf Sierra Bravo, who is operating the set, and Jan is actually carrying it. This is the view inside the canvas hood around the WS68P, and it shows the controls. I don't know what the controls are. I didn't get very close to operating it at all. This is a picture of Peter, Golf 8 BLS, and myself, which was taken at this monument which was erected to commemorate the heroism of the civilians at Arnhem, and gave tremendous support to the parachutists during the battle. And it's just a way of thanking them for their help in the situation. It shows the two of us and our backpacks we use for the tests. This is a photo taken at the bridge, the famous bridge at Arnhem, towards the end of the shooting. It shows several people. There's Peter, G8 BLS, with his backpack on. There's the producer, Lloyd Clark, a military historian who was helping the making of the film, sound recordist, and the cameraman, who don't seem particularly too interested in us, but they're looking at the river. I'm pleased to see that Peter is wearing the rig is wearing its overcoat, its raincoat, and they were really worth every single penny of it. When we came back from the filming at Arnhem, we thought that the trees were quite an influence on the poor radio conditions, the poor propagation there. So after a couple of months we did some more tests in a tree area, which is this one here. This is the King's Forest, it says so here, near a Newmarket in Suffolk. Basically we drove here and parked at this place here, the parking spot, and then we walked all around the place, Peter and I, and quite a distance between us, and did tests with. We had no problems in talking to each other with a quarter watt of AM at all. But this particular test was a bit inconclusive about the effect of trees on the propagation. I mentioned earlier that Peter, G8 BLS, did a lot more investigative work after our battlefield's detective activity. He focused on the nature of the ground at Arnhem, taking soil samples and discussing issues with the Dutch water authorities and universities. He found out the ground resistivity in parts of the battlefield area was extremely high, and this, coupled with the abnormally deep groundwater levels, would no doubt affect the performance of radio communications there. Peter published a paper on his findings in the Journal of the Vintage and Military Amateur Radio Society, VMARS. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get hold of a copy of that, but maybe I will in the future there. I think the work he did would have made a really interesting presentation. Some months after the documentary was shown on TV, I was very surprised to receive this closely typed 2-page letter. It is from Major General A.J. Dean Drummond, CB, DSO and MC. It starts as follows. Dear Mr. Robinson, I was given a copy of your investigation into some of the problems we had at Arnhem. I took part in that operation. I was the officer commanding No. 1 Company and also the second in command of the Signals Regiment. In the letter, the Major General explains why the WS-68Ps had to be used at Arnhem. He also says that the radio communication problems there have been exaggerated, and in fact, after the divisional headquarters had moved to the Hartenstein Hotel the day after the landings, there were very few signal problems, except for casualties to equipment from enemy engagements. And there were plenty of those. In the letter, he goes on to talk about differences in performance between the WS-68P and more modern radios. He goes on there in the letter to recommend a book, and I'll read about that. I notice your references did not include the very best book on Arnhem and signals by Lewis Golden. Golden used a proper analysis to check not only when a link was opened, but also a record of when it was received at the other end. The book is called Echoes from Arnhem, and I do have the book, and here it is. It's out of print now, but I'm sure you might be able to get a copy of it from your local library on loan. Or second-hand booksellers. I must warn you though, the cost is very high. It's now quite a collector's item. There is a second book which I have, which is this. It's called Return Ticket, and it's written by Anthony Dean Drummond, the Major General of course, about his experiences escaping from prisoner of war camps, and also the last quarter of the book is dealing with his experiences at Arnhem with the signals. Very readable, quite it's quite an adventure story really, and I thoroughly recommend this. Again, out of print, but you might be able to get a copy from the library or a bookseller. So I'll give more information about the two books at the end of the video, if you want to make notes to obtain them. Finally, thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any queries or comments, I'll try and answer those in the live session that follows the video.